My guest today is Rabbi Goldberg, the founder of Kids Kicking Cancer. Rabbi G lost his first child to leukemia at the age of 2 and brings a wealth of personal experience to dealing with children and families facing life-threatening illness. His program, which began with a handful of children at Children's Hospital of Michigan, now teaches over 4,500 children and teens a year in 46 hospitals in 5 countries. Rabbi G has been honored as a hero in People magazine and CNN's Top 10 Heroes. Rabbi G, I am so happy you're here with me today.
You served as an Orthodox rabbi for almost 20 years, and then you resigned to be a sensei. So that's a pretty unconventional path. How did you get involved in martial arts to begin with?
Well, I tell rabbis and clergy everywhere, you have to know how to break your board. So I did it with karate. I did it with martial arts. But really, in truth, my teacher, my sensei in life has very much been my daughter of blessed memory. At the age of 2 years old, 1 year into her treatment, having leukemia, at a time where leukemia was not the very treatable disease it is today, at 1 year old, she was diagnosed. At 2 years old, we were in a bone marrow transplant at UCLA. And she would tell the doctors, no medication today, please, and tell the 5-year-old kids in the clinic not to cry. In those days, the transplants were so toxic. Her skin was sloughing off, mucositis in her mouth, constant vomiting, diarrhea. It was the worst of the worst. And she would lie on top of me for comfort and pat me on the back and say, "It's okay, Daddy, I love you." So she was my real sensei.
That's incredible. She was born with so much empathy. She just was born like that. You didn't teach her. She was too young to be taught that.
There are certain things that just come from a person's soul. And I was told by mystics later on that she was an ancient soul. Her name was Sarah, Basha, which means Sarah, the daughter of God. And she was named on the week, she was actually named after my grandmother, whose name was Basha. But she was named on the week that we read about the birth of Sarah, and she died on the week that we read about the death of Sarah, two years later.
That's extraordinary. Incredible. Did you know when she was born that she was an ancient soul? Did you sense that right when she was like a little kid, like right when she came out of the womb?
Honestly, first time dad,
Yeah.
Diapers to change,
Right.
Bills to pay,
Yeah.
Life to live. Never thought that this would be the trajectory. Never, ever, ever imagined that we would lose our child. Even when I was told that 2% chance of survival, I told the doctors, if the Jewish people relied on probability, we wouldn't be here today. Don't worry about the numbers.
Right.
In fact, that 2% was actually given to me when I was a child. When I was in first grade, I had LanBen Syndrome. And it's a disease which was very rare in the early 60s.
I read in your book that you were pinned down by a nurse when you had this disease as a child, and you were in so much pain, but you had no voice, you couldn't speak, you couldn't communicate your pain. And then I read about a little boy that you were helping at the hospital in Michigan who had cancer, who was receiving a treatment, and he was in so much pain, and she was pinning him down, and you just found yourself screaming out, right?
Wait, you're hurting, loosen up. That's my voice. But I was given also 2% chance to survive that disease. So for me, that 2% was a no-brainer that there's no way my child's going to die.
Do you think the pain that you experienced when you were a child, do you think that did something to your soul to allow you to do what you do now with the kids that you work with?
I think everyone in their lives are given scripts that can either defeat them or allow them to become great. My daughter was great. She refused to be defeated under the most extraordinary of circumstances. And now because of her life and really because of her death, I find myself in a position allowing children to see their own greatness. And then they become teachers to adults. We teach children, we teach adults just with adults, we talk slower.
One of the things that I've just noticed in the work that you do is you really help people find their light. Children who are undergoing cancer treatments, but not only that, in the corporate world, you go out into the world and you teach executives, you teach people at Walmart. The children become the teachers to help ignite other people's lights. I find that so incredibly empowering and beautiful.
When children know that there's a purpose for what they're going through, it changes everything. I was, before COVID, in Milan and introduced to a young lady as we were working through the hospital there. And this young lady was recently diagnosed and she was distraught. She had been weeks before a healthy teenager. And now she not only lost her hair, but really knew that her life was very much in peril. She was sick, going for surgery, and she was depressed. And her doctor said, would you meet this young lady? And of course, I was happy to do so. And I felt kind of relieved because her English was a lot better than my Italian. And the moment I met her, I said, look, I have to be honest with you. I have an agenda. I have an agenda. There are a lot of kids who have a lot of pain in this hospital. If you can learn how to deal with your pain, you could become a great teacher for them. Do you think you'd be interested in doing that? And her face lit up like a light bulb, just turned on that moment. And wow, there might be a reason that I'm going through all of this madness. We did a meditation together, maybe 12, 13 minutes. And when she opened up her eyes, I asked, how do you feel? And she said, Fantissimo. I feel fantastic. Her mom and her doctor, who both sides of her, started to cry because they realized that I didn't do anything. I allowed this girl to know that despite the darkness, she had this amazing light inside of herself, and that light could illuminate the children around her.
It's incredible. You really, your organization, the way that I see it is you allow people to find and see their purpose and to find the light that's within them, because everyone has it. And you're empowering kids to do that in such a precarious, fragile time, like in a time of such suffering.
That's our mantra: power, peace, purpose. That no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in this amazing energy, this light, and push out pain, fear, and anger. We ask the children around the globe, what's your purpose? They yell out, to teach the world. And every one of those kids becomes a teacher.
I want to take you back to 1999 when Kids Kicking Cancer was born. Can you share that incredible story of empathy with us?
Well, it actually goes back earlier than 1999, if I may.
Sure.
This goes back to ancient history for your listeners. When, after our daughter passed away, I found myself directing a camp for kids with cancer in New York State. For those of you who may not be aware, New York is located very close to the United States. And I came upon this 5-year-old child in a clinic getting his port access for his chemotherapy. I also have the opportunity to teach in a medical school. So we know that in the old days, we used to teach there was a pain center in the brain, and it's not true. There's a whole neuromatrix, which means if a child or an adult are afraid, angry, there's no purpose to their pain, the level of the pain goes up. So I came upon this 5-year-old child in the clinic. He's being pinned down by 2 nurses. Another third nurse has a large syringe to plunge into his Hickman catheter in his chest. And he's yelling something awful, which means he's going to have not just the experience of the pain, but multiply that experience by his fear and anguish. And it was so counterintuitive to me. I walked in there and I just yelled, "Wait!" And they all stopped. Even the kids stopped screaming. They looked at me, and frankly, I don't have a clue what I was going to say next. I just approached the nurses and said, could I have 5 minutes with this child? The nurses were happy to leave. The little boy looked at me like I was the governor. I just stayed his execution. And I approached this child and I said, I'm a black belt, which doesn't mean much, but to a little child, it's a wow. I said to the child, do you want me to teach you some karate? He almost jumped off the table. I explained to him in the martial arts, you learn that pain is a message you don't have to listen to. breathe in this amazing chi, this energy, and push out the pain. Watch me. And 5 minutes later, we're doing a simple Tai Chi breathing technique. And 20 minutes later, they took out the needle, and he looked up at the nurse and he said, "Did you do it yet?" And that's when Kids Kicking Cancer was born. So we went from there to piloting this in the camp that we worked in, the Chai Lifelines Camp Simcha. Then in 1999, we approached Children's Hospital of Michigan. Could we start a pilot for your children with cancer? We started with 10 kids. One of those children today is one of our instructors. He was told he wasn't going to survive. He actually had an entire plate made for his missing ribs. And his mom asked, "Well, what happens when he gets older?" And she was told, "Don't worry, he's not going to get older." The doctor passed away, but the kid's doing great. He's working for us, teaching others how to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And so we began with that pilot group of 10 children in Children's Hospital of Michigan in 1999. And now we see children in 126 facilities in 9 countries, with our goal, please God, to spread this light of empathy and empowerment to 1 million children around the world.
How many children have you touched so far with the program?
So we've touched, and it's really hard to know the numbers now because we work directly with about 20,000 children, but indirectly, we're teaching this as a standard of care. We're teaching this to social workers, child life specialists, to doctors, and to nurses really around the world. We put on seminars that indicate not only the evidence of what we do, and we have evidence. We have functional MRIs that show the difference after 4 interventions that we make in the brain of a child, allowing the child to know that they have the power. Children can often be victimized. We make them into victors. But when we let them know that they can teach others, and we touch that empathy inside of their own head, that they have a purpose to what they're doing, that empowerment speaks to the amygdala, speaks to the parts of the child's brain that's precocious, that's there. And because they have that power, other people listen to them. So we actually brought a group of kids to teach Pfizer executives in New York, children from our Sloan Kettering program. And Pfizer Italy called me 3 days later. Would I come to Rome to teach them how to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness? And Pfizer Italy got so excited, they introduced me to Bambino Gesù Hospital, which is the Vatican Children's Hospital, which I was like really cool that an Orthodox rabbi needed permission from the Pope's office to teach an Eastern meditative technique to Vatican children. And they said yes. So now we're in 14 hospitals in Italy. And right before COVID, I had the privilege of being invited to a seminar on child resilience in the Vatican. And I was invited to the Papal Palace to speak to the Pope. And in our conversation, teaching him power, peace, purpose, and what the children do. And the Pope grabbed my elbow. Now, in the martial arts, that's the beginning of a takedown. So my instincts, like we're clicking in, like to move in for a hip throw. And then I said, that's probably not a good idea. It was like a big joke, Pope and Rabbi on the floor in the Papal Palace. But I did restrain myself, and I'm glad that I did. And he was so generous. He leaned over to me, understanding the power of these children. And he said, "Could you have the children pray for me?" That's the power of the children. That's the power of the children to understand that they can help others. And touching that empathy trigger is in itself empowerment. And that's power, peace, purpose.
And if I may also, it's incredible how you're bringing different religions together and different people together. It's very unifying, and it's created a sense of inclusivity because there is more in terms of what we share than what divides us. And I think your charity really shows that.
I was in a hospital in Israel, children's hospital in Israel, and I was invited to work with a child, a 5-year-old child, who had brain surgery that apparently affected the movement in his right arm. When I walked into the room, his mother was frantically trying to get him to move his right arm, and the child is like, he's not there. He's not moving that arm for anything. I approached the child and I started working with his left arm and letting him feel his power and then begin to mimic movement back and forth to make a long procedure short. In 20 minutes, he was giving me a high five with his right arm. Now, his mom would not give me a hug because she was a very religious Muslim woman from Gaza. We taught a child, the dad gave me a big hug, and that he called in the doctors to see that all of a sudden his child is moving the right hand. They're all our children. And if these children can teach the world how to blow out the darkness of hatred and realize, we're more alike than we're different. And if we could connect and allow the children to be those teachers of empathy, there would be a lot less problems in the world.
A lot less war, a lot less divisiveness and hatred like we're seeing right now. We've talked about the story of Jack at the hospital where you told the nurse because he had triggered these thoughts of you when you were a kid and the pain that you endured. But there's this interesting concept that you bring up in the book. It's called UFOs. Unidentified fears and obstacles. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that because I just feel that is so instructive for also cultivating our own empathy.
It's extraordinary how pain is really a memory. In Africa, we work with children who don't have limb salvage surgery. So we have a lot of amputees. And the saddest thing in Africa is you walk into a hospital like Baragwanath in Soweto, and there's child after child after child after child, 2 toilets at the end of the hall. And you see these children, end of life care, amputees, and many of the kids have nobody with them. 8 years old, 9 years old, 6 years old. The parents are too impoverished to leave whatever they're doing, taking care of the rest of the family, and to be with that child. So working with these children who have phantom pain, which means that the limb that's been severed is still hurting them. How does that work? It's not Bluetooth. How does that pain work? So we know exactly where in the central nervous system that lives now. As of 2 years ago, we're able to pinpoint it, not us, but researchers. And we're able to understand that pain sits in the brain as a memory, but not just physical pain, emotional pain, anguish, fear. Every time you have those run-ins with mom and dad, I tell people regularly that outside of my children, nobody had perfect parents. And we all have memories of fears and anguish and pain, and they sit inside. I remember working with a gentleman who came to me once, and he said, he's leaving his wife. She's abusive. And I sat him down, and there's 5 kids. We don't want to have that happen. And it took about 5 minutes to realize, hey, buddy, you're the guy with the anger issue. Right. You're the one who's probably abusive at home. And I taught him to identify, to put a number on the anger level that he's feeling versus the insult or the trigger of his wife. So a 2 would be if she burnt the toast. A 10 would be if she burnt the house. And there's a difference between those 2, insults. So he comes to me one day and he says, am I crazy? Now, I don't want to give him a quick diagnosis because he was paying for counseling. So I said, why do you say that? He said, my wife, she just dissed me. That's disrespect on the street. She just dissed me. It was like a 1 or a 2. I respond like it was a 9 or a 10. Am I crazy? So I explained to this gentleman that what she did was she triggered an area of being disrespected where there was a 9 from his dad and an 8 from his uncle and a 10 from his sister. And all of those memories of emotional pain sit together synaptically in the brain. So what your wife did is she touched that center and zoom, they all go flooding out. Like imagine that there's a ramp and it opens up and all these trucks come zooming out at the same time. So you're flooded with that emotion. And that's painful. And you've got the adrenal gland shooting out glucocorticoids on an ongoing basis because you're always feeling this kind of level of disrespect. And this is like zoom like a volcano, it all came up. So you're not crazy, but you're responding to that memory of pain. All of us have memories of pain, of distress, of not feeling respected or loved or cared for. Part of it is nature, the chemical makeup, how some people respond more strongly. Part of it is nurture. But we're learning that we're not just our genetic code. There's an epigenetic code, which means that the toxicity of the world around us impacts that, but so does our soul. The ability to find that spiritual energy and know that whatever is in my face that's ringing in my head and setting off those alarms hurts, but it's an opportunity for greatness. If I can identify that, I can change it. If I can change it, I eventually become a teacher. And that's where empathy comes in. When you realize that you can illuminate the planet with that strength, with that light, and so many people need this, and I simply put a smile on my face, and it affects your brain chemically.
Yes. One of the things you do is you flip the script. You know, the students, the kids are the teachers, right? They're the masters, we're the students, right? I love that because it shows that empowerment and self-actualization is possible for anyone. If a 3-year-old can learn how to do this, a 3-year-old with cancer, so can you. And I just find that that message is just incredibly empowering for everyone because everyone could benefit from this program and the breathing that you teach. I was wondering if you could walk us through a breath break.
Sure.
Okay.
But I should tell you that breath break is spelled B-R-A-K-E,
Okay.
not like coffee break. And breath break means that you can actually use your breathing to break, to stop the onslaught of the chemicals of stress. You can go from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic response. When I first started Kids Kicking Cancer, my medical colleague said, don't emphasize the breath work, it's a little heebie-jeebie. I do grand rounds in hospitals around the world. Even though I left the active rabbinate, my greatest joy in life is to hear myself speak. So I do a lot of that, as you know, Kim. And when I do grand rounds in hospitals, inevitably there's someone who comes and says, I'm the one trained in the breath work here. Because the literature, the evidence of using simple breathing to lower stress is extraordinary. But what we do that's unusual in the breath break is we make it a somatic experience. In other words, the breathing is connected to movement. Not unlike yoga, we've cross-trained with yoga specialists. Personally, I find yoga a bit of a stretch, but that's my just poor sense of humor. But the ability to do this wherever you are, whenever this occurs, is based on biofeedback. So the first step in the breath break is to be observant. But often people think observant means to be observing rules and rituals. The first step for anyone of being observant is to observe themselves. Is my body tight? And if you think for a moment, what's your special spot of tightness? Some people feel it in their neck. Some people feel it in their shoulders, their chest, their stomach, their head. Wherever it is, it's a message. It's a message that you're having a stress response. I tell people if you're not lifting weights and you're feeling that tightness, likely you're having a stress response. And I give these seminars to busy executives and I say, you pick up your phone and your arm gets tight. It's not because your phone's too heavy, probably an Android. But usually it's because of caller ID. And all of a sudden it hits that trigger and boom, and within nanoseconds, your brain is signaling protection versus connection. So this immediate triggering of response inside of your body will always make your body someplace tight. Become observant of that. If you're feeling that tightness, rather than thinking about, am I thinking and I'm going to try to get rid of the thoughts and I shouldn't be thinking that, that very often makes the thinking and the thought process even more obsessive. Simply become observant of the tightness in your body. And when you're feeling that, take a breath break. Now, we've trademarked the breath break. I get into a fight in the airports all the time. Sir, you were breathing. We have the trademark. we find this hard to litigate, but it would be nice if they paid Kids Kicking Cancer. But we're not, that's okay. All of your wonderful listeners and viewers can do a breath break free of charge.
Fabulous.
Here's how it works. When you're feeling the tightness, and actually you should try to practice this as much as you can, like every hour, just take a breath break. Working on an app for this, but at the moment, right now, just take a breath break. The way we do the breath break is we rub our hands together. That kind of gets the chi, the energy going. We put our hands like this level, so it becomes a little bit of a navel exercise. But the key is that it's a wave. So if you notice, I'm starting with my chin forward, my shoulders forward, and then simply we recommend to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. If that doesn't work for you, you can choose any orifice you'd like. But the key is to in and out slowly and comfortably, so that in every breath, there's a kind of a sweet feeling. It's not forced. It's not different from breathing in general. It's got to work. Can't do it wrong. Because people, am I doing it right? No, just create a flow. So it looks like this. We're breathing in and lifting our body up with a breath, up, up, up. As my chin is going up, my shoulders. At the top of the breath, I pull in a little bit more and hold that for 3 days. I'm sorry, for 3 seconds. I always mess up on that, I'm sorry. So you're pulling it up, up, up. 2, 3, and then now notice as I'm breathing out, my chin is falling, my shoulders are falling, my chest. The end of the breath, I push out a little bit more. Now, I find that adults get a little bit uptight using their hands, and certainly don't do that while you're driving. Unless you're driving in Toronto, then it doesn't matter anyway, usually in traffic. But the key is breathing your body up, and then what happens in the exhale, we go through what's called RSA, respiratory synaptic sinus arrhythmia, respiratory sinus arrhythmia, which is not a medical condition, it's natural. As you're exhaling, your metabolism is falling just a touch. Taking advantage of that to even emphasize it, and using the breath, which is the only part of the autonomic nervous system, that's the stuff that happens by itself, you can so easily control, gives a message to adrenal gland, shut off the stress chemicals. Nobody's after me to kill me. But when you do that, we go a step further. In the martial arts, we're very focused on imagery. Before we break a board or a brick, you have to see it break. If you see your hands break, it's a bad idea. Don't do it. So when we breathe in, what we're breathing in is the lights. And we imagine we're breathing in this amazing energy of light. But we don't want to breathe out the light. We want to breathe out the darkness. And everyone has darkness. Usually when I give this class to couples, they're looking at, oh yeah. But everyone has stress. Everyone has, think of one thing, one fear, one anger, one unresolved conflict. And you breathe in the light and just blow that out. You feel like the darkness, like a smoky cloud coming out of your mouth. You breathe out the darkness and just let it go. So let's do it together. Okay. Close your eyes. Breathe in the light. Pull it up, up, up. And blow out the darkness. Feel your chin fall, your shoulders, your chest, and push it out. Breathe in the light. And blow out the darkness. Breathe in the light. Blow out the darkness. And just relax for a moment. And again, this could be done without your hands. It could be done while you're talking to someone. But the key is there's the somatic element to the breath, the movement and the imagery. No matter where you are, you can be talking to a person who's filled with darkness. When you are able to put that light on your being and you could smile at someone, that empathy, that connection is so fantastic. There's a thing called a Duchaine smile, which is a smile that you can actually see around your eyes, even with a mask on. And that smile to someone else changes the brain of someone else. That's what empathy does. It connects to people on a level that has a neurological impact, which is fascinating. But they did a study in 1958. They did a study on looking at a yearbook of members of a sports team at Wayne State University. The athletes who had a Duchenne smile on their face had a 38% chance of living longer based on just pure mortality than the ones that did not. Now, one could say, which is the cause? Because we know that smiling can actually change your brain, but it doesn't matter. The more you put that smile on your face, you're changing yourself. Now, in the martial arts, we learned that pushing is weak, pull is powerful. When the children do their ninja needle technique, explains when the needle's coming in, it hurts more when you get tight. But if you can pull in the discomfort and then blow it out the other way, you can take control. We literally have 3-year-old children sitting in clinics and pushing out the pain of venal punctures. But that's really, Kim, that's a life's lesson. If you think about how many people we end up pushing rather than pulling. And our relationships where we're pushing, they're the ones that don't work. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. When you could put a smile on your face, when you could feel that empathy, connection to someone, and pull them towards you, there are significant changes in the brains of both parties. That's the power of the smile. When one paints their face with the light of empathy, what you're really doing is you're not only changing your own brain, but you're changing the people around you. There's nothing more powerful than that.
When you're speaking, you're just making me think of the workplace and how workplaces could be so transformed by that. Marriages, friendships, if we were pulling, right, instead of pushing. Because I think you're right. I think that dynamic could really just change the world. I love that.
You know, it's Polonius in Hamlet said that lend thine ear to everyone, but thy voice to few. Listen to people. We're so into talking, and I'm probably one of the greatest sinners in that, and I just love to hear myself speak. But empathy really requires people to not only connect, but pull that person towards you. Give them a platform to be able to express their thoughts and their feelings. Be empathetic as a listener. When it really moves you, you're going to express that in how you look and how you smile and how you listen. When you can listen empathetically, you've changed the conversation. You've added healing and light. Unfortunately, for most of us, it's about me. So, let me just tell you how to do this differently. And we're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. The ability to silence your own voice, breathe in that light, and blow out the darkness and pull someone towards you. That's really powerful.
It's so powerful. We have a class on self-compassion that we teach. And one of the things that we teach people to do is deep listening. Because you're right, so many people are just waiting for their turn to speak when they're in conversation. They're not listening. They're just waiting to inject their.
Let me interrupt you and tell you what I think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know that well. I know that well. I was just joking about that interruption. But the thing is, because our minds are not thinking about the other. Empathy is to understand that we grow the most when it's not about me. You know, when after we do our breath break, I teach people 2 words in Korean to use. I don't know if your listeners know Korean, but the words are Baruch Hashem. Now, it's really not Korean. I have to offer that to you, but there was a gentleman by the name of Gerard Butler who after he made the movie The 300, so he had some pain in his back. He's a great guy, good friend of our program, personal friend. And I was helping Jerry with some breathing in the light through his pain and create this circuitry of movement and light. And he did great with it. Then I taught him those two words, Baruch Hashem. And so he went to the Korean restaurant down the block, still going, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. But to be transparent, Baruch Hashem is actually Hebrew. And it literally means blessed is the name, referring to a God, a power above us. And the God of your own light, however you view God, whatever you call God, the word Baruch is not we're blessing God. It's from the language of a brecha, a pool or a channel. It's the recognition that if I'm having this conversation, this is flowing through me from God. If I'm having this challenge, this is flowing through me from God. And if I have this relationship, as troubled as it may be, it's an opportunity to feel that light flow through me. And the more we understand that naturally, the triggers are shooting off in our brain because, of when I was 7, when I was 9, when I was 10, all of the challenges that remain in that amalgam that forces me to constantly prove myself. Do you know how important I am? You know who I am? Do you really think that I'm an idiot like everybody else thinks I'm an idiot? Because that's what I think everyone thinks. So I need to, rather than absorb the negativity from someone else, when you pull someone towards you, you're pulling their light. They may not realize it yet, but the more you can smile, the more you can empathize. What you're really doing is you're doing what we're supposed to do, and that is connect from soul to soul. The boundaries of our lives, our own life stories, they're artificial. God creates these scripts for our lives, but all of life is finding the strength to respond to those scripts. And we do that with light. It not only gives us greater health and an opportunity to live longer from the biochemical standpoint, but spiritually, it allows us to change the world.
Amen to that. You talk a lot about optimism, and you speak about a young boy named Bernard.
Let me tell you the story of Bernard Johnson. So there's a group in Michigan, and I think they're located globally, like the Lions, like the Rotary. There's a group called the Optimist Club. And there's probably a group called the Pessimists. Those are optimists with experience. And many people would kind of sign on for that one. But the Optimists made a beautiful, beautiful party for our children. And at the end of the party, and a not yet 11-year-old boy is being wheeled to the front by his twin sister. Bernard Johnson was in the chair, and Britney is pushing the wheelchair. And Bernard asked for the microphone. And the optimist who was running the event, the optimist MC, was happy to give the microphone to Bernard. And this little boy in the wheelchair in a loud voice says, "Hi, my name is Bernard." And everyone stopped. There were about 400 people milling about, and they're all looking at this little child in the wheelchair. And he says to everyone, "Thank you so much for making such a beautiful party and the presents. And I want to thank you, optimists. And I want to thank Kids Kicking Cancer. You guys are a family. But I want to teach you what they teach us at Kids Kicking Cancer. And that is, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light and blow out the darkness." And then he proceeded to teach everyone our breath break. And he says, remember, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And then they gave me the microphone. I had to take a breath break because we all knew that Bernard's mom ran away when he was a baby. His dad died when he was 8 years old. His uncle died when he was 9 years old. And that was the year that Bernard was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor that was slowly stealing any movement from his body. With his one good hand and beautiful smile, this child is telling everyone there, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And so after I composed myself, I told the audience, Bernard Johnson defined optimism. But the definition of optimism is not that everything is going to be great. The definition of optimism means that you can respond to everything with greatness. And that's what Bernard Johnson taught the world.
In the book, you talk about Britney. You talk about when Bernard passed away and how she was just sick with grief, how she was inconsolable. You went to her home. They called you to come to her home to talk to her. And you said that she cried for an hour straight. I just was crying when I was reading this part of the book, but how you were able to use that listening that you talk about, that deep listening and that empathy that you have, and how you empowered Britney in that moment to become the teacher, to carry on Bernard's legacy, and how she had this transformation like in minutes, right? It was like in moments. I just thought that that was the most beautiful story of how to overcome grief too, right? And how to deal with grief. I think it was just when you had told her.
Her grandmother asked me if I would let her know she couldn't, that Bernard had passed. So I sat there anxiously waiting for her arrival. And when Brittany walked into the room, she immediately realized it was a very small house, kind of fairly run down in Detroit, and Grandma kept it up with great dignity. And Bernard had this little room filled with medical equipment squeezed in there, and Brittany immediately looked and saw Bernard's bed was empty. And she said, where is he? Thinking that he was back in the hospital or someplace else. So she was hysterical for a long time. But when she finally had to take her breath, I said, take another one. Now take one for Bernard, because you know that's what Bernard taught the world, that we can use every breath to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And Brittany, right now, it's you and me. We got to do this. And you're going to be Bernard's mouth and hold on to his soul. And you're going to feel his soul with you, because that's forever. And we talked, and we talked, and we talked. And I still talk to Brittany. And she's still carrying Bernard's light. And we're privileged to carry the light of children across the planet, knowing that no matter what they face, they have the ability to spread this light and illuminate it. We give black belts to children before they pass away, and Bernard had received his. But on the black belt, we embroider the child's name and the words master teacher. We never tell them it's the final ceremony of their life. There's always first degree, second degree, a third degree. But a lot of times the kids will tell us, psst, don't tell mom that I know, but I know. And so on that black belt, we embroider the words master teacher. And we promise the children that they will always be teaching for us. So today, as I have the privilege of traveling the planet and learning from amazing, amazing master teachers, I carry the light of these children with us, as do our black belts around the world. In Africa, the disease that we lose 10% of children to in the United States and Canada, we lose 90% to in Africa. Same disease. And so painful for them. But every one of our martial arts therapists know that they're traveling with the light of these children. And we do it together, and we do it as a family, and we cry together. I tell these hardened, very talented black belts, when you stop being able to cry, then you quit. Because empathy and the ability to cry is cleansing to the soul. And without it, we couldn't survive.
Maybe that's why I cry so much.
It's good, it's healthy.
There is a pervasive idea in our society that life is about happiness. It's about personal happiness, your children's happiness. And ever since I was a kid, that idea always rubbed me personally in the wrong way, right? This pursuit of happiness. There's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, I don't know if you've heard it, I'm sure you have, that says, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It's to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, and to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. And I just find that your organization represents this quote from Emerson. It just makes me feel it so strongly when I think of the work that you do. And really, what's so inspiring to me is that you're teaching people through kids, because kids are the wisest teachers, right? And For me, it gets rubbed away, right? That light often gets rubbed away by cynicism and jadedness, but you bring it back. You're bringing it back through kids. And I just find that incredibly inspiring. Could you speak to that idea of like our preoccupation as a society with happiness versus purpose?
I think people misunderstand what happiness is. And studies indicate that people who pursue happiness rarely find it. People who pursue opportunity of growth and purpose are the most happiest people. The word for happiness in Hebrew is sameach, which is actually an amalgam of two words, sam, moach. Moach is the brain, sam is to put. We have an ongoing choice in life. Which part of our brain do we respond to? The brain naturally, and the amygdala, lower parts of the brain, collect to this concept of protection, that anxiety. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I don't reach this? What if my house is not big enough, or this is not fancy enough, and I'm the only one wearing these colored socks if you're a kid, which could be absolutely devastating. And so that creates the need for protection. That creates the need for pushing and pulling and all of the things that are so counterproductive to real happiness. Real happiness is where you put your brain. If you stay stuck in that anxiety, that fear, that what if that, what if that, but if you can get to the prefrontal cortex and connect to your higher element of your soul, and you could feel that light come through you, and you spread that light, nothing makes you feel better. So if it's a matter of how you feel, feeling is composite of chemicals in your body. And there are many things that could give you feelings, but they're not real. They don't last. They don't impact you, and they don't impact the world around you. When it's not about taking your own blood pressure and your own, does this make me happy? Does this taste good? But it's rather about how you can breathe in that light and blow out that darkness and spread that light. I've been with children at the very end of their lives, and they're happy. I've had children say that they've defeated their cancer because they're more connected to God and the people around them. I've had adults who are unable to move their bodies because of advanced disease tell me they've never felt more powerful. Knowing that that light inside of ourselves is forever, and that we're put on this planet for a very short amount of time. Life's a quick trip, a really quick trip. When we realize that we're here right now to do a job that only I could do, everyone, your script in your life was written with all of the chapters of challenge. If you think that you wrote those chapters, boy, are you wrong. All of life is how we respond to those scripts. But when we respond with life, with purpose, when we could identify the darkness, and when we could spread that light, and when we could pull people towards us with that empathy, we change the world, and nothing makes us happier. That's what we call power, peace, purpose.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're amazing.